Hi everybody, how are you? This is attorney Arkady Frekhtman. I'm a New York City personal injury trial attorney, and I wanted to do a follow-up video on a recent video that was published. The video was a quick deposition tip. It was an actual deposition that I did a few weeks ago where a client was questioned for over 5 hours. And, he was asked all these questions, which is very typical of the defense and the insurance company defense lawyers. It's almost like a trick that they do. So they ask you a lot of questions, some of them may be irrelevant, about like what medications do you take, or the liability, when liability is not even an issue, just kind of to wear you down, get you tired. And then at the very end of the deposition, they ask you, well, what are some of the things that you were able to do before this injury that you are no longer able to do? And by that point, a lot of clients are tired, they're exhausted, and they just kind of say, oh, I can't play basketball, or I can't play football, give one or two examples. And they're not able to convey the full extent of how this injury changed their life. So one of the ways to be able to combat that is just to stay resilient and stay strong and have a game plan. So if you're going to be testifying in a deposition, know what you want to say in terms of how this crash or this fall or this incident affected you and how it changed your life. Kind of have a game plan, know what you want to say. So for example, if they ask you, even if they ask you at the very end when you're tired and they ask you, for example, what are some of the things that you were able to do before that you can no longer do? What you could do is you could do a day in the life. And what I mean by that is, take the day when you had the most pain after this injury. Let's say, for example, it was the day when you had surgery, and then just do a day in the life. For example, you woke up, but you couldn't really sleep. So you woke up and you were in pain and you didn't sleep all night, tossing and turning. Then you get up, you want to take a shower, you go to the shower. You can't really do that. You have to bend down, wash yourself. It's hard because you have an injury, whether it's to the neck, to the lower back, to the knee. It's going to be difficult. You get out of the shower, you want to get dressed. You sit down, you try to bend over to put your socks on. You can't do that. You maybe need help. And you just keep going. For example, you might have stairs in your house. You have to go up the stairs, down the stairs. You want to reach for something like a coffee cup in the cupboard. If you have a shoulder injury, it's hard to do. If you have a neck injury, it's all connected, it's hard to do. And you just keep going and do like a typical day and explain all of the ways that your life has been affected. Because what the insurance companies do is they listen to all this and they write it all down, and then they submit it. Like the defense lawyer submits a report to the insurance carrier, and then the insurance adjuster will then read that report, and based on the report of their lawyer, they rely on that, and that's how they then give you an amount that they think is a fair settlement. So what you want to do is have that lawyer in the report. You don't want the lawyer to write, oh, this guy said he can't play basketball. But that kind of by default means he could do everything else, So, but you want to have him say, no, this guy gave like a day in the life. He really explained in detail that he can't sleep, he can't sit, he can't take a shower, he can't get dressed, he can't do this, he can't do that. So, give a lot of examples. The other thing you can do is you could get a activity list. That we have one that we've been using that's about 13 pages long. And what it does is it just kind of has a lot of activities, and some of them are things that you wouldn't think of. For example, with respect to cooking, it has things like, slicing and chopping and dicing and, sewing, or it has like really specifics. Like, for example, how have my Thanksgiving holidays or my Christmas holidays been affected, or birthdays, or, things that you might not think of. Different sports that it lists, like playing Frisbee, just a lot of examples. It's 13 pages long. And I've shared that with some people, and I could, share that if you text me 347-566-9595. I could share that with you. So that's not a bad technique either, because what you do there is you read through the 13 pages, you kind of check off which ones apply to you, and then you could mention some of those in your deposition. And then the third thing you can do is you could think of just yourself, maybe with your lawyer, if your lawyer is going to be doing a deep dive and helping you tell your human story. just, you know, have a conversation with your lawyer during the deposition prep and come up with a few stories, like little vignettes, like stories about either something that you were able to do before you got hurt, right? Your passion in terms of what you love to do, or your relationships, like either with your spouse or with your kids or your best friend, you know, things, people that you loved and things that you love to do. So it could be something that you really loved that was like life-changing before you got hurt and that you did it. And that kind of, you know, implies that if you wanted to do this again now, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? Either a relationship or a activity. And then the same thing, right? So you could think of things that you could do before, and then maybe things that you can't do now, and maybe tell a story about it. You know, just have like one or two stories. And that way you know, now you have all this ammunition, right? Because when they start asking you, what are some of the things you can do that you can no longer do, you know, as well? Or they could also ask, what are some of the things that you were able to do before that you can no longer do at all? You know, they ask you those two questions usually. So in response to that, you could say, you know, number one, day in the life, and go through, like, you could even write it out like in a diary, how your day, a typical day goes. And, you know, be specific. It could be like, you know, I can't take my kid to his baseball little league game because I'm hurt, or it hurts me to sit there and watch, you know, him play. I can't even sit there and watch. I have to get up. I have to walk around. I have to leave. And my child is saying, well, why don't you watch me play little league? You know, it could be something like that. But go through like the typical day. That's really important. Typical day. That's number one. Number two is this activities list, right? All these activities. And you could get really specific, like different sports, different holidays, family functions, you know, all the ways that you were affected. And then the third thing is tell some stories. And I think stories actually is really important. Even though it's third, it might be like really number one out of all of these. Because if you can come up with some really powerful stories about, you know, how this has affected you. Like, for example, when I was on trial just last Monday, we were picking a jury, and there was like a quick story. This client had a back injury and he had a fusion to his lumbar. And so I talked to his brother, and his brother said, you know, we're very competitive, of course, because, you know, we're brothers. And the client, he was really good, like in the gym. He would lift, you know, he was able to lift. So I could never lift more than him, you know, and I knew that. But in basketball, it was a little bit like the opposite. You know, I was a little bit better in basketball. But now, you know, he doesn't go to the gym. He doesn't lift at all. And, you know, he's not going to play basketball. So it's almost like that rivalry between the two brothers. Even though now they're, you know, older in their 40s, but that rivalry kind of like just had to die out. So it's not just about the pain and the suffering that one individual has, but it's more about even something like that, like a competitive rivalry and a friendly competition between brothers that was like lifelong. Now that whole competition and that whole aspect of their personalities has to die out because he's not able to do it. So yeah, something like that, like a little bit of a story. Another one example is, you know, this same client, he has two daughters and they're 16 and 17. And, you know, he loves his daughters, but now the daughters, instead of enjoying their teenage years and instead of doing things that they love to do, they have to go shopping. They have to bring up the groceries, you know, up the stairs. There's no elevator in the building. And it's almost like he's a burden to them. They have to do this extra stuff because he's so hurt, right? Because he had this spinal fusion and he's has like this metal plate in his lower spine and he's not able to do things. So we were going to tell some of those stories. We were prepared with that. So the same thing with depositions, just come up with a few stories. And the stories could be also about either what you love to do, activities. It could be a specific time that you did an activity, like whether it's skiing or tennis or baseball or anything, right? It could be anything that involves any physical activity, or it doesn't even have to be physical, right? It could even be something like sitting for a long time, or like enjoying a movie together. Maybe you can't sit for a long time, or going to dinner, or sitting in a restaurant for a long time, or watching a concert, standing at a concert. You're not able to stand at a concert. It could be anything, right? You have to take it from your life. So it could be an activity, or it could also be a relationship, like when you have a close relationship, either to a spouse, to a girlfriend, boyfriend, kids, it could be a friend, like a best friend that you like to take trips somewhere, or, you know, whatever it is, and how that was disrupted. So I think those are the ways you could answer this question without, you know, letting the defense win. Because if you just say, oh, I can't, like, you know, I can't play soccer, I can't play basketball, that's like, then they think, oh, you can do everything else. But if you do it this way, now you're giving them day in the life, right? Specific from the time you wake up all the way to the time you go to bed, and all the things that you do, like shopping and cleaning, and, you know, just do a typical day. You could like write it all out in your diary. You have this list of activities that's like 13 pages long. You can check from the list. And the third thing is you have these stories about, you know, your life, and some of them could be very powerful stories. They could be impactful in the sense that, you know, maybe you had to overcome something in your life. I had a client who was at one point homeless, and he came out of homelessness, and now he was living in a special type of facility. And then in that facility, the ceiling collapsed. So it's almost like a story of he beat all the odds, right? He stayed out of jail. He was homeless, but he beat homelessness. Now he was living in an apartment, and it was for people like who were coming out of homelessness to get back up on their feet. So he was helping himself. So it was like a phoenix rising, right? He was coming out, and he was going to overcome all the obstacles in his life. And then right when he was about to succeed, this landlord just failed to fix the ceiling, because they were a greedy landlord who just wanted to make money from the government and from poor people by taking as much money from all these programs, but refused to fix the ceiling. Now the ceiling collapsed at him. Now he needed a surgery. It pushed him back down. But we were going to say, look, but nothing's going to stop him. He's going to overcome that too. He hasn't done it yet. He's doing his best, but he's going to overcome that too, whether it's in a few years or, you know. So you always want to tell the story of hope and the story of trying. You never want to be like, oh, I'm so sad, I give up, because then people don't really want to, you know, allow for money, because if you gave up, then why should they allow for money? So yeah, so these are all the ways that I think that you could address depositions, and the same thing goes for trials, right? Because what we're talking about essentially is the way that you explain the injury and the injury's effects and impact on your life. Not just your life, but your family's life, your entire like ecosystem, your environment, right? Everybody that, and that's why it's important also to talk to neighbors and coworkers and friends and family. Like we interviewed the brother, or we went to this client's house, you know, do a deeper dive, because then you see things that you wouldn't otherwise see by going to their house, by seeing how they live, and you learn a lot more. And then you can tell a more compelling story. And also the lawyer becomes like more invested, right? Because now the lawyer's been to your house, the lawyer has broken bread with you. He really understands your family. He really understands you. So then the client's story is like a fire burning in the lawyer's heart. So when the lawyer comes to court, they're like ready to battle. They're like, you know, as opposed to just having the client out there, you know that they exist, like John Smith, but you don't really know anything about them. And then, you know, okay, they have a torn meniscus with a surgery, but it's just another torn meniscus, or it's another C5, C6 disc bulge. But you don't really know how that C5, C6 disc bulge is affecting the person and affecting their spouse, their family, their life, right? So that's really important to do that. So I hope this was helpful. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Let us know what questions you have. Our goal is helping serious injury victims and families, and we are here for you. Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye.